what, folks? This is gonna be a long one. Tomb Raider is a 2018 American action-adventure film directed by Roar Uthag with a screenplay by Geneva Robertson-Dworet and Alistair Siddons from a story by Dworet and Evan Doherty, based on the 2013 video game of the same name and its sequel Rise of the Tomb Raider by Crystal Dynamics. It is a reboot of the Tomb Raider film series, and in it we see Lara Croft embark on a perilous journey to her father's last known destination, hoping to solve the mystery of his disappearance. After great deliberation, I find it would be impossible for me to talk about this movie in as much depth as I would like without avoiding spoilers or making game comparisons, so I warn all viewers that this review will contain spoilers. If you haven't seen it yet and don't wish to know anything that happens in the movie, then stop watching now, and hopefully my rating in the description box will act as enough of a guide for you. I will begin by saying on its own merit this film isn't terrible. It's filled with a fun amount of action and the performances were good. Alicia Vikander does a terrific job in the role of Lara Croft and has many of the same qualities as the game version, which is great. The character is a young, vibrant, intelligent and strong woman, and Vikander depicts that wonderfully. All performances are good, every actor does their best to do as much as they can with the material they have, but that's the problem, the material. However, I enjoyed the use of colour in this movie. It applied very much the same techniques as the game, which I kind of liked. Very bright during the day and very dingy and dark during the night. Every time Lara was in water, it looked exactly how it did in the game, though how she managed to end up perfectly dry 2 seconds later, I find miraculous. On its own, the movie is enjoyable and fun, but as a game adaptation or even as a series reboot, for me personally, it's a fail. This movie has taken the plot structure and story from the 2013 game, combined it with the plot structure and story from the 2015 game, and also added in plot elements from the movie Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life. That is just too much. You are rebooting a series by putting in too much at once, and each element they are using contradicts the other. Not to mention they have then decided to exclude a lot of elements. They had it all completely back the front. They added in things they shouldn't have and excluded things they shouldn't have. I'm baffled by these choices. For starters, they bring Lara's father back to life to then have him heroically sacrifice himself later, something that was not at all necessary because her father's death is very much a catalyst for the story in the second game. By including Lara's father into this movie, what they have done is prevent it from really being about Lara. In the 2013 game, Lara is a fresh out of university student specialized in the field of archaeology. She encourages an expedition to find the lost island of Yamatai and find the resting place of the Sun Queen Himiko. Her motives are to follow her passion for archaeology and to make a discovery that is her own, go on an adventure instead of having her nose in a book, and really make a name for herself. It's about her finding who she is, following her dreams, which then quickly turns into survival of the fittest. She must do things she's never done and rise to challenges she's never faced because it's a simple do or die scenario. As the game progresses, she's stronger, she endures, she does it not only for her own survival but for that of her friends. That's what I loved about Lara, that's what made her someone to admire, but I lost all of that in this movie. Plus, the sequel game shows that she didn't just walk away unaffected. In the sequel game, while she was more capable, she is also traumatized from the events she endured and suffers from PTSD. In this movie, we see Lara appearing to walk away rather unscathed, which makes very little psychological sense and leaves very little room for character growth. In this, we have a woman who goes into a survival situation with pre-learned skills she developed over the years, from archery to fighting, and she puts them to use. We have a character with honestly no interest in archaeology, having never even gone to university, but she happens to know how to translate everything for no other reason than her father was able to. The entire film is centered around her father. It is all about him and very little about her. She's there to find him. She makes every move with his safety in mind. It has nothing to do with her, and this is a movie that is meant to be about her. That is an absolute massive fail. How can we see her as a character to look up to and admire when none of her actions or decisions or even the plot have anything to do with our lead character? What's that? Oh yeah, it's time for Ashley's alcoholic tip of the day. My alcoholic tip of the day is when you finally get this movie on DVD, take a shot every time Lara's dad calls her Sprout. Trust me, you will be thoroughly drunk in no time, but back to the review. Combining the organization Trinity into this plot was highly unnecessary. It would have been much smarter to introduce it at the end of the movie as to then tie it into an additional movie. They should not have been the focus of this movie at all. To combine two games in one is asking for trouble. They would have had better success to just adapt and focus on the one game. It's not as though they were lacking material. Speaking of material, the changes they made to the mythology of Yamatai and Himiko were quite infuriating. I do not say this as a game fan going, "How dare you make changes!" No, that's not what this is. They are infuriating because the changes they made completely ripped away all the culture from the story. The beauty of the game for me is that as you go along, you see and explore what was once a thriving civilization. You find the remnants of what life was once like there. We get to see the culture, and Lara puts her knowledge to use, explaining what various artifacts are, what they were used for, and how old they were. You see the ghosts of a long-lost Japanese culture. This movie has absolutely no culture. We have an island that is instead the tomb of an ancient queen. No sign of civilization, no sign of culture or history, no sense of tradition. Just an island with a tomb. Even the original movies had a hell of a lot more going on. Then on top of that, it removes all the supernatural elements. How do you have a Tomb Raider movie with no supernatural elements? Even Indiana Jones had the supernatural. They also had aliens, but whatever. In the game, Himiko is called the Sun Queen and was known for having shamanistic powers that enabled her to control the weather, which was why the area around Yamatai was called the Dragon's Triangle. Himiko's powers created a constant storm that essentially prevents people from getting off the island. This thousands-year-old queen's soul is trapped in a decaying body awaiting to be transferred to a new host, as was the tradition. A young girl would be selected to receive Himiko's soul, which in turn would destroy her soul but allow the People's Queen to live on. However, the last girl selected ended her own life instead of giving her body to Himiko, and Himiko's soul has been trapped ever since, with her powers causing constant destruction because of her anger. In this movie, Himiko is referred to as the Death Queen because whomever she touched instantly died. It is revealed that Himiko had no powers, so our deadly storming sea is no longer special, it's just a stormy sea. Which then begs the question, how has it taken people so long to find this island when you can literally fly there with no problem? What Himiko was the carrier of an ancient disease to which she was immune. Anyone who came into direct contact with her would contract it and die. So to save her people, she entombs herself on a deserted island, and now Trinity want her disease for themselves. This is very much the plot from Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life. They wished to find Pandora's box and turned it into a biogenetic weapon. This saddens me. In other movies, I accept when myth is how ancient people describe things they couldn't understand, but this is Tomb Raider! Archaeology first, myth second, and it always turned out that the myths weren't based on superstitions, they were based on truth, but truth the modern world no longer believed in. This movie is all over the map, and yes, I am making a great many comparisons to the game, but given this is a game adaptation, it left me with no choice. We have a Tomb Raider who has no education in the field she is supposed to specialize in, or even any interest in it really. An organization that seeks to control the supernatural but are looking for an ancient queen who has no supernatural qualities. A lead female who is meant to be empowering but has nothing worth admiring because her every act has nothing to do with her. Then we have a plot that is equally over the map, including the fact it had 3 potential endings. While the second ending sets up for a sequel perfectly, the other 2 do not and aren't even necessary. They should have chosen one, but hey, thought, why have one when you can have 3? The movie takes a long time to get going and really get to the point, and a lot of the setup is quite pointless. The action isn't terrible, it's goofy fun, but it has the painful air of convenience. They try to include all the moments in the game where Lara nearly dies, which don't work in the movie because you are wondering how she isn't dead yet. While in the game, she's actually died about 50 times, and you're still trying to figure out how to stop that and get into the next part of the game. I found it very hard to take most of the film seriously due to the set. The set that is used for areas around Yamatai were the most artificial looking sets I had ever seen. Every boulder and rock looked obviously fake. You could see how neatly carved they were and could tell they were made of styrofoam. Not to mention the sound editors failed at their job because every time a character knocked on one of those rocks, it made that hollow echoing sound which further confirmed they were fake. If I stopped comparing the movie to the game, I could say this movie is fun, but it's weak and lacks intelligence. The traps and tomb puzzles are, as I mentioned earlier, convenient. There isn't much about them that would require much skill to figure out. You don't need a degree in anything. The plot is weak. Our villain is a very boring, bland, one-dimensional villain, which is very unfortunate. There is nothing about this movie that feels serious. People are dying, but it's all done in a way where it's as though the director was going for a tone of "this is fun." It's as if the writers and director were thinking that because this is based on a game, it should be fun because games are fun. I would describe this as a silly movie to watch with friends over pizza and beer, nothing worth focusing on or investing too much time into. This is not the worst game adapted movie, but it certainly has not broken the curse. It's another failed attempt at adapting the genre, but it's sort of on the right track. If they continue with the franchise, perhaps they can learn from their mistakes. If not, I'll go back to playing the games and watching the original film series because I enjoyed that a hell of a lot more. If you stuck around for the entire review, thank you. You are awesome, and we should totally be friends. After you subscribe to this channel and like this video. Until next time, bye.
Bite off the venomous hand, follow the chemical scent. Look for the hole in the face, take everything you demand, fast as you can, and run for your life. Run for your life.